Clark officially done for the 2025 WNBA season, as she and the Fever announced on social media. The Fever and Clark saying that she tried to get back on the floor. It appears that she just ran out of time, not able to get enough confidence back in her body as the season wraps up and the playoffs are likely about to begin for.
This is unbelievable. Officially, Caitlin Clark will miss the entire season. And honestly, it's more than just a tough break for her. It's nothing short of a catastrophe for the WNBA. Let's stop and really think about the broader picture here. For weeks, fans have been kept on edge with a series of ambiguous updates.
Caitlin Clark, out for the remainder of the 2025 season, something we all think we knew was coming after what Stephanie White said earlier today. We couldn't be too sure until we see it for ourselves. And with this announcement from the GOAT's mouth herself, Caitlin Clark won't be returning this season, nor if the Indiana Fever make the play.
Each day, there was a new whisper that maybe, just maybe, she'd be back on the court. Everyone, including fans and analysts alike, held out hope. Ticket sales surged in anticipation, fueled by the belief that Clark would return to help lead the Fever. But now we're seeing an overwhelming amount of refund requests flooding in.
I mean, it's a gut punch that basically encompasses an entire season of them. The Fever have lost so many players to injury, but obviously none bigger than Clark. And there was such a wait for this second season after her magnificent rookie season. And then, the anticipation of her possibly coming back, only for that not to happen, takes a lot of air out of the room, obviously takes a lot of energy out of the fans, and is a devastating blow for not just the Fever. And
how did we end up here? How did the league's star player, the very face of women's basketball, the one who has single-handedly driven attendance and TV ratings, get sidelined by a slew of injuries that feel more like a series of missteps in medical management than just bad luck? And why did the WNBA continue to inject us with that faint glimmer of optimism, making us believe that Clark was on the verge of returning, even as her body seemed to be deteriorating right in front of our eyes?
That made it clear she was still a long way from.
Well, because Caitlin Clark fans, I want to say Fever fans, but at this point, so many of you, including myself, has lost faith in everybody involved in leadership and in management and coaching. We've just sort of, I got to tell you, I don't have any more real good things to say about the Fever organization as of now, because I will contend that they have known this was going to happen and they did not want to tell him.
Since this is how it operates.
Before we dive deep into the details, though, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below showing your support for Caitlin Clark, and let me know, do you think the Fever can still make the playoffs without her? Let's start the conversation. When her sophomore year ended, the WNBA was suddenly left grappling with a devastating injury story that nobody wanted to believe.
Clark, a two-time All-Star and the 2024 WNBA Rookie of the Year, has been sidelined suffering a right groin injury during the Fever's 87-77 win over the Connecticut Sun on July 15th. If you guys remember that game, Caitlin Clark put the team on her back in the winding minutes to give the Indiana Fever that lead. Clark also suffered a bone bruise at a later date during her recovery.
But here's the thing. Now that we have the full timeline, the pattern is undeniable, and it paints a much clearer picture than we realized at the time. The trouble began early. Back in May, Clark started experiencing discomfort in her quad. She even missed a preseason game because of it. It seemed like a minor setback at first, something that would be easily fixed. But things quickly escalated from there. By May 24, just 4 games into the regular season, Clark had to sit out again, this time with a left quad strain that wasn't just a brief inconvenience. And that was just the beginning. By the end of June, she was dealing with yet another injury, a developing strain on her left side, which added to an already growing list of ailments. At that point, you'd think things couldn't get worse, but they did. On July 15th, in the final minutes of a game, Clark injured her right groin. That was the breaking point. Her season was over.
Caitlin has worked so hard throughout this time, doing everything possible to recover and return to the court, but ultimately, time is not on our side, said Indiana Fever COO and GM Amber Cox. While we wait, while we will continue working with Caitlin and provide her with every resource we have available, there is not enough time left in our season for her to safely return. and her long-term health and well-being remains our top priority. We are looking forward to having her back at full strength to start the 2026 season. Clark appeared in 13 games during the regular season, averaging 16.5 points, 8.8 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, while helping lead the team to the 2025 WNBA Commissioner's Cup.
Her own remarks.
For months, fans held on to hope, believing the worst was behind them. But then came August, and that's when the final blow came. Clark had developed a bone bruise in her left ankle. That moment, that realization, shattered the hope that her season would ever regain momentum. What was meant to be a massive breakout year for her turned into an endless series of disappointing shutouts. By the end of it all, Clark had played just 13 games. And let me tell you, every injury along the way, every halt in her comeback just added to the frustration, not only for her but for fans too. Meanwhile, the Fever's management continued to downplay her injuries, labeling them as just part of the recovery process, using these reassuring statements to keep the optimism alive and ticket sales high. The league's messaging was clear: don't worry, she'll be back soon. But as we now know, the reality was far more complicated and far more concerning. At a certain point, it became glaringly obvious that Clark wasn't fully recovered, even after her quad injury supposedly healed. Her minutes on the court were being carefully monitored, her performance started to slip, and the signs that she wasn't 100% became too apparent to ignore.
And this is what Caitlin wrote. I had hoped to share a better update, but I will not be returning to play this season. I spent hours in the gym every day with the singular goal of getting back out there. Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling. I want to thank everyone who had my back through all the uncertainty. This has been incredibly frustrating, but even in the bad, there is good. The way fans continue to show up for me in the Fever brought me so much joy and important perspective. I'm so proud of how this team has only gotten stronger through the adversity this year. Now it's time to close out the season and claim our spot.
Fans noticed. Observers started questioning whether her comebacks were being rushed. Was she being pushed back onto the court before her body was truly ready? Coach Stephanie White later confirmed to reporters that Clark hadn't been participating in much contact work, despite the team's assertions that they were using the West Coast trip to assess her progress. This small detail spoke volumes. Clark wasn't ready to play at full capacity, but the team and the public were still being led to believe she was just a step away from returning to form. And that's where the real concern began to surface: overcompensation. When one part of the body isn't fully healed, the strain naturally shifts to other areas. The result? New injuries. Imagine trying to patch a leaking pipe without addressing the underlying pressure that caused it in the first place. Eventually, that pipe is going to burst again. That's exactly what happened with Clark's groin injury.
So, it all started last year, in her rookie season, where she received 20% of all the flagrant fouls in the league. And most of them came from Angel Reese in the Chicago Sky. And these weren't basketball plays. They were not only fouling her, but they were getting up, laughing about it, laughing about Caitlin Clark getting assaulted. Any other work environment, people go to jail.
After her quad, the stress was transferred to the surrounding muscles, and just like that, the injury cycle continued. Yet the team and the league kept up the facade of optimism. Fans were shown glimpses of Clark jogging lightly during practice, taking a few warm-up shots, laughing with teammates. These little moments were meant to signal that everything was getting better, that a return was just around the corner. Local media outlets were quick to pick up on this and reported that she'd be back on the court soon, echoing the team's assurances. But experts knew better. Groin and quad injuries are persistent, and rushing a recovery is rarely a good idea. The outward positivity of the team's updates clashed completely with the medical reality, and every new setback, each time Clark was forced to sit out again, only made the growing sense of despair worse. And then came July 15, the moment everything completely fell apart. In the final minute of a game, Clark sustained another groin injury, this time to her right side, and that was it. Her season was sealed. The months of rehab and intermittent comebacks had clearly taken their toll. The cracks in her body were impossible to ignore, and it became painfully obvious that she hadn't been given enough time to fully heal. On top of that, the bone bruise in her ankle was a harsh reminder of just how fragile her situation had become. Fans were finally forced to face the truth. This wasn't a season of bad luck. It was a season of mismanagement, with one setback leading to another, and Clark's body never truly getting the chance to reset. Then, in one of the most gut-wrenching moments, Clark herself spoke out, shattering any remaining delusions. She opened up about her experience, saying that she had been working tirelessly, spending every day in the gym trying to come back. When asked about how she felt about it all, her response was simple, yet devastating. Disappointed isn't a big enough word. That statement, that raw, unfiltered honesty, hit harder than any team-issued press release could have. Clark had given everything to try to salvage her season, while the public narrative had painted a picture of her constantly on the verge of being okay. But in reality, her body had simply given out, and the dream of her carrying the WNBA to new heights had slipped away. There's a deeper layer to this entire story that many observers can't ignore: the physical toll Clark endured, and the way the league marketed her as the face of women's basketball. The constant pressure, the high expectations, the brutal competition, all of it came at a cost. At this point, fans and media began to ask tough questions. Why, when Clark was already dealing with multiple injuries, was she still being exposed to such intense physical punishment on the court? Why wasn't anyone looking out for her? Why wasn't she being better protected from the rough play? This frustration began to shift from just concern over her injuries to serious questions about how she was being handled on the floor. It wasn't just her body breaking down, it was the way the league and the referees had failed to protect her. The situation quickly escalated, with more and more fans and analysts pointing out a troubling trend. Despite Clark's aggressive style of play, she wasn't getting the calls that should have been made. Referees, it seemed, weren't intervening to defend her the way they should have been. Every nationally televised game showcased moments where hard fouls went uncalled, and social media was ablaze with fans asking the same question: why is the league's most valuable player being treated this way? Why was she taking such punishment without any protection from the referees? This led to a broader conversation about the WNBA's treatment of its star players, and how the league had essentially bet its future on a player who was being pushed to the brink. The lack of action in addressing the physical toll Clark was taking eventually spiraled into a bigger issue, one that extended far beyond just her injury. It became a conversation about the league's priorities and how it was handling its brightest star. Ultimately, Clark's injury saga became emblematic of a larger issue: the WNBA's struggles to manage its top talent. The league had placed so much weight on Clark's shoulders, but instead of nurturing and protecting her, it seemed like they were only pushing her further into the ground. Fans, media, and even Clark herself were left asking, when is enough enough?